Okay.
And I don't know, I didn't do too much prep for this week's call, so we can sort of once again have a sort of dynamic agenda. One thing that Jim and I have been playing with recently is setting up a Federated WIki server for use within the Digital Life Collective and Open Learning Commons and sort of the shared space.
So what is the status now of the Federated WIki server? Can we use it?
Well, Jim would have the update there. And I guess I'm curious, has everyone here met before, or maybe there's some new connections?
I think I guess I've been on with Jim before, last week maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I'm brain damaged. It takes me a while to place who people are.
Cool. Well, I think Roland and Jim know each other, and so yeah, maybe just. Oh wait, there's two Jims, so that'll be confusing. I think.
Yes.
Just to confuse things, I'm trying to figure out my sound system is misbehaving.
Okay.
So I may disappear for a moment and come back. I can't. My headset doesn't want to pick up.
Okay. I will say two words or three words about myself. I'm in Belgium, in Antwerp. I work in Brussels as a journalist in a newsroom, and I was involved in various courses facilitated by Howard Rheingold. And after those courses, we had for a small community of book readers. So we have been reading some books, and Robert was among us. And we also got into Dig Life. Then I just was too busy in my work life to continue. And so recently I returned to Dig Life. That's a bit my story.
Cool, and welcome to Christina as well.
Hello, Christina.
Hey, Roland.
Hello.
Hi, Jim. Jim McGee, I haven't met you before.
I think he said he's trying to fix some audio issues he's having, so he might not be able to respond right away. Yeah, we're not able to hear you. And so I guess we'll weave in and out of brief intros once we can, but the other thing that we were going to do is get an update from Jim on this, Jim Whitescarver, on the status of our new Federated WIki server that's, I think, just about ready. It needs a few little tweaks to allow us to authenticate, I think, is the status we're at.
Awesome.
I don't know if Jim could. It's going to be weird saying Jim. Jim Whitescarver can say more.
You can say Jim Scarver.
Yeah. Okay, Jim Scarver. Cool.
Christina, why don't you try going navigating to christina.wiki.diglife.coop.
Maybe screen share too, because I think, oh, if you didn't notice, we are recording as well. Oh, you're muted.
All right. Oops. Is that right, Jim?
Looks good. We'll see what happens. There you go.
Whoa, we are live.
So it creates a domain for anything anybody types in. It creates a wiki. I don't know if that's going to be a problem.
Well, is the claiming the site working yet, Jim, or we still need to do that so that?
That we still need to do that.
Okay, yeah, you'll notice in the bottom left there's a little yellow padlock. Once the authentication's working, you'll be able to click that, and depending on how we do the authentication, you'll be able to. There's options, but it could either be Google or Twitter or our own email system, or I think Jim was looking at how to link it with Mattermost in some way so that maybe it just uses your same credentials there, but I'm not sure.
We should automate the creation of that when anybody creates a Mattermost username, and then just send them the link to their wiki and say, if you would like to notepad this, here it is. Because people create unique Mattermost names, right?
Yeah, I was hoping to use Mattermost authentication. However,
That's great.
However, the only choices that they give you out of the box are GitHub, Google, or Twitter. So it's going to take some investigation and possible customization.
So if I were to try and do this, like write anything, it wouldn't work here?
I think it would just save locally for you. So and then you might be able to pull those in later. Try just double clicking there.
I don't think it'll work.
No, because I do know that Federated WIki is typically it works offline. So I think it actually would work, that you could type in all the pages you want. It just wouldn't be saved for later until you sort of actually claim the site and go back and actually maybe I should demo, because I can show you a working version. Has everyone here played with or seen Federated WIki before?
No, not yet.
No? Okay.
But I'm on the site right now.
I think I just heard you, Jim.
I think I finally, yeah, I had to like go through 3 different headsets and connections, but I think I'm here. Hello.
Hello.
Greetings.
Just because, right? You know, this is not, Robert, if this is supposed to be a recurring calendar entry, it never made it as such on my machine.
Oh,
whenever
well,
we set it up.
Yeah, I didn't do like an invite to each person. It's just sort of on the, I'll do a better version of it, but it's just on the Digital Life Collective calendar, and you would have had to have sort of added that and maybe copied it for yourself. But yeah,
I'm still trying to figure out how all of that, all of the things that are going on at the moment. There are about 7 different things that I can think of that are happening, none of which I quite understand yet. But that's not unusual in my life, so it may be may have something to do with my inability to manage things. So
no, well, I think you're right. I'll just get a list of emails and people's preferred emails, and then create like a specific one event so that it's for that one event is invited to it. I will do a little share here of. So this is a Federated WIki that I have for myself that does have the authentication working. So you'll see it has my name down there, and I think I've already signed in. And so there's kind of a lot to Federated WIki that isn't obvious. Lots of people sort of don't exactly like the interface. And it works on mobile as well. And basically this little subtle thing down here that is checked or unchecked, whether you're in wiki mode or not wiki mode, determines whether you're editing or just reading. And then as you open up pages, they open up sort of to the right, and you can sort of just keep going. I forget what it's called, what they call this sort of line of wiki pages. And yeah, so you'll see this site here is kind of grayed out because it's not in my current wiki, but this little button, you can fork a page at any time. And then, well, I don't know why that's, oh, okay. It doesn't even exist. I'd have to create a new page. There's a thing called your neighborhood. So your neighborhood sort of represents your current context. So think of wiki as like a bunch of overlaid wikis that can have namespace clashes, or like basically have the same, like if well, here you go. Somebody else has Robert Best in their wiki, and it gives you that visual indication of that at the top. And so literally it's saying that their version of Robert Best is the exact same copy as my copy. And then each wiki site has like a welcome visitors page. And you can see here that there's 3 other FedWiki sites on this farm. So a farm is kind of like a grouping of federated wiki sites who are on the same server and potentially collaborating together in writing whatever they're creating on the wiki together. So I can jump. So here's the welcome visitors for, what did I click on? Orientation.fedwiki.org. That just happens to be in my current neighborhood. I think if I clicked just welcome visitors, yeah, there you go. Okay. Anyways, somebody else who might join us occasionally is David Boville, and this proto.institute is his site. I've just done what was shown earlier and added my name and kind of joined up. So these things here are called rosters, which is sort of like a visual representation of multiple other federated wiki sites. And you'll see down here in the bottom right corner is like what's in my current neighborhood. And there's 379 pages in my current neighborhood. So if I do a search, it's only searching within that neighborhood. And these this comparison up here of like pages with this exact same name, older and newer, that's only based on what's in my current neighborhood. So if I go to say this roster,
is there a complete overlap between who's on what server and the neighborhood idea?
No, you can bring into your neighborhood sites that aren't even on your server. They're on some other server somewhere else. So, so you'll notice this big long lineup. It's called a roster of other wiki sites. If I click this button, it should bring it all into my current neighborhood. See down here how they're all loading? So it's gone out and it's grabbed all of those JSON files of all those different FedWiki sites. And now I have 3,000 pages in my current neighborhood that I can search. And as I explore, I'll get little clues about, oh yeah, and you'll also notice you can see like activity. This is
there was Colin.
Yeah, so actually it's still loading.
Will you give me the link to mapping tools?
Mapping tool, where do you see? Oh, here you go, sure.
That's awesome, thank you.
Where's our, well, I'll just share it in the Mattermost
Great.
MetaCAugs chat. So yeah, now I have this huge sort of list of pages in my current sort of, I guess, mental context or whatever, and I can search them. And there's also these activity pages of recent activity, and some of this stuff I'm not super familiar with. Oh, here you go. Because David's created sort of like a custom flavor of his own FedWiki. So typically all these links wouldn't be here when you start a new site. So it wouldn't have proto activity and recent federation activity. So I think he's created this as sort of like a default. So if I click that, yeah, you'll see this might take a while, but it's going out and finding pretty much any wiki page change in the whole federation of federated wikis and listing them based on how recently they were changed. But then, yeah, you can see I can click and explore them and just say I like this page on holarchies. This sort of halo around it means that it's not currently in my personal wiki. But if I wanted to fork it, I would just make sure I'm on wiki mode here. And then I fork the page. So I'll just fork holarchies. And this seems to be telling me that, so the yellow halo means it's only local. So that's what I was telling you, that you probably could write in the FedWiki site that Jim Scarver gave you.
How do you know it's telling you it's only local?
Well, that's the whole point of it. You see the yellow halo around this particular page or this card. That means that it's only local, even though I've forked it. So that must mean I'm not actually signed in. So I'll just sign in. Oh, that's why I'm using the wrong browser. Hold on a second.
You want to stop screen share since we're recording, or?
Nah, I won't have to show my password.
Okay.
Sorry, I got too many tabs and stuff. Okay, so now it should work. Let me log in. Okay, first off, let's do what I did before, the exact same. Oops, not what I wanted. What happened? Maybe it takes a little while. Oh yeah, loading. Just trying to find a page that I can, let's see if I fork this, if it'll do the same thing earlier as the yellow. Yeah, okay, so it's yellow, but if I log in, now if I fork it, see the yellow halo goes away. So that gives you an indication that, okay, now it's actually backed up and saved onto your personal wiki site. And what that means is it's on whatever server it's on, and really all each of these pages are is just a little bit of JSON. So at the bottom of the page, you can click the JSON thing, and everything it takes to build this whole page is just saved in one JSON object. So, and really a federated wiki is really easy to sort of, if you wanted to take your data and move somewhere else, it's really easy because it's just a sort of almost like a flat file structure on the server that's just a bunch of JSON files, and you can just copy a folder, move it somewhere else, and then on a new server, and now you've got your whole entire wiki that you had just in the new space. I don't know, I feel like is there any questions, or there's lots of little hidden features.
I have so many questions, I don't know where to start.
Awesome. I'm so glad somebody else said that.
Yeah.
I guess another one of the, it's like, there's part of me going, oh, this is cool, I can see a million things to do with it. And then another part's going, I have no clue where to start.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
and I would love, and I'm really, really craving to see a picture of what's going on. A diagram of what's connected to what and what sits where.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and I'm sure somewhere I can't be the only one who's been.
You mean architecturally, like how?
All of it. I just, I don't, I just see, this is the classic, trying to watch someone who is, 3 steps farther down the road behave and then infer what's going on. And, it's better that you're doing it because you're still learning it. I would hate to have, Dave or somebody else doing this who lives in this, because then I'd be even more confused. I was watching the mapping call video from the other day where you were doing something similar, and again, I was, within minutes, I was lost, but trying to stick with it. And for me, it would be like, a whiteboard with someone drawing boxes and arrows would be helpful, or the equivalent kind of. Because I don't know where I don't know where anything is, and it bothers me that I don't know. I understand. For me, I like to know how it, at least conceptually, how it's all wired together under the hood. Because then I can visualize. Okay, I know what's happening. I'm not prepared. I'm not comfortable just simply accepting the magic and going forward. If that makes sense, I want to understand how the magic is being made, and then
Yes,
I get lost.
But I was wondering whether it's okay. It's a bit an old-fashioned saying, but if I should have to explain this to my grandmother, how would I do it? I would sure as hell not say, this is a single-page browser application which can read from many sites at once and save changes in that browser. Because she would be completely lost, because I'm even lost when I read it. So I think we should somehow explain in very plain, simple words what it's about and why people would even try it. Because I'd love to try it because I love trying things, but many people just lack time or energy to try such things, and well, they need a reason to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, again, I would love to play, but I don't know how to start.
Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly my experience. And I
Yeah.
was introduced to it like last summer.
This is the third
And-
time I've been introduced to it, at least.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay, this is my first time.
Stumbled, that I've, you know, I came across this when I was trying to build, doing a project which I was trying to do several years ago called Collaborating Minds, and we were looking for, you know, a way to
Mhm.
get large scale collaboration to work, and you know, we didn't know what we were doing, so that was fine. But you know, somewhere in that process, I discovered the existence of Federated Wiki and thought, oh, that would have been an interesting path to follow, and then I set it aside because I couldn't understand it, and I didn't have anybody to help me walk down the path to say, here's how you get started. You know, here's what's safe to do, here's what's not safe to do, you know.
Well, that's the I'd say that's the typical thing I've heard so far with people trying, I guess, to, I don't know if it's always teach themselves, but I benefited because I actually had Ward Cunningham himself sort of teach me on multiple different calls how to use it and where all the little hidden things are, and there's still more that I don't know about. And then I didn't put it into sort of practice, so I've sort of learned it but haven't been using it. But I'm excited, sort of. I'm excited to sort of get one up and use it within a community and sort of have that be what feeds the ongoing practice.
If we're sharing this welcome visitors page for all members of DigLife to have their username wiki.diglife.coop, can we have a read the docs?
Yeah, and I'm sure I would just have to search it up. And actually, Ward has a call every Wednesdays that gets pretty deeply technical, but they're also open to just people sort of asking questions. So I'm sure there's better demos and stuff than I've just given that is kind of just linkable resources of like how to learn how to do Federated Wiki.
Just with the wiki.diglife.coop, if you come to the initial page, you read about what a Federated Wiki is, and you look at the How to Wiki page, you can sort of navigate and learn about how to do things. The tricky things are down here at the bottom of the screen, where you have the search bar. You have this wiki here, which doesn't tell you anything, but you have to click on it and get this check mark before you can start editing. And they have this lock over here, which is the login, which we haven't gotten working yet. And maybe, at 4 o'clock, actually, is a normal work study time for me, that if anybody shows up, we may go do that in the work study. And so I guess I better get my phone. Now, once you have this editing check marks set, you can move paragraphs around between different places. You can collection. You can make a new page. I put it in double brackets, and then you might want to move stuff over here. What happened to the rest of my open visitor page?
I think you moved it to the other page.
Oh, I moved it. I moved it to Federated Wiki. But you really can't do any damage. Um,
Actually, Jim, is this saving even though nobody's authenticated? Is it actually editing the jimscarver.wiki?
just in the browser.
Because I
Not
notice
that-
I'm not seeing the yellow halo to say that it's only local.
Well, until I log in, everything's local, pretty much. If I let me go back to the beginning here. Welcome visitors. Didn't save anything. Assuming
Yeah.
this is the same wiki.
Yeah, but you deleted
Oh,
Jim
no.
Scarver from the beginning.
Right, Jim Scarver. Yeah, this one nothing got updated.
Can you give me the link for that how-to wiki?
It's right at the bottom of your page, how to wiki.
Oh,
Right.
of course.
The weird thing is when I go to jimscarver.wiki, I do see that it's been edited and it says new page at the bottom. So maybe the current server setup is letting people edit all these pages without actually authenticating.
Maybe do a shift reload. Yeah. Sorry.
Wow. Okay, so for now it is, you can sort of do some
when I
damage
used the
until you get
backpack,
authentication.
when I went back in the browser, it didn't show the changes, but if I load it again, it would be now. Oh, I reloaded. I'm not editing anymore.
So what this enables us to do is to fork wiki pages in a very easily. And as the Wikipedia entry says, it allows people that way to have a kind of a personalized perspective on a wiki.
Mm-hmm.
Contrasting this to Wikipedia, for instance, where you have a kind of one truth being out there and being protected, and here you can just fork a page and do whatever you like with it.
Actually, I want to show you something, and this is, I think, a creation of David Boville, who is helping us get this set up. But if I, so here's a Wikipedia page. I'm pretty sure with this Proto Institute version, because Federated Wiki is very pluggable, so it has all kinds of different plugins. And so I think, where's one? There's a transporter. Okay, well, let me just give it a try. Supposedly, I can just drag a link from here into this transporter. And there, now you see it's brought in the front part of that Wikipedia page, and then all I need to do is fork it down here.
Okay.
And now it's on my wiki, and I've got a head start at now I can take this pre-existing wiki page and start pulling it apart and doing what I want with it. But now anybody that has collective intelligence on their wiki and on our farm, we can start sort of collaborating and see how we differ on different things. But
what if you like collaborating on similarities and differences? What if you want to fork something, but then make sure that it stays in sync with changes made by?
What you can do is see, these are all older versions of visitor pages. So if I click on it, so see, it's showing me, because all of these pages have the same name, welcome visitors. Everybody has a welcome visitors page based on how they've set it up. So just say, this is mine on the left. This blue one means, I think it means it's somebody else's. So if I realize, oh, this is an older version or a new version and I prefer it and I want to stay in sync, I don't think there's a way to say, I always want to follow Christina and whatever changes she makes. But if I notice there's a change just because I'm navigating my wiki and I see, oh, look, Christina made a change. Let me go look at it. I open it here. If I like it, I can go down and just hit the fork button, and now that version is now my version. I've synced up. So that would be one way to do it. I don't think there's a way to sort of opt in to sort of use other people as like a proxy or something, or a delegate or something, that I'm just going to follow them on this particular topic however they write.
Well, I'm just thinking about like the welcome visitors page for the Dig Life server. We might want to, you know, iterate that a few times before it's stable. So the people who come in early, are they going to not get those iterations? Are they going to have to pull them in manually?
Well, yeah, I think what you do is you set up sort of like a default page, and then each new wiki has that. So yeah, if people come
But
in
it's the
early,
snapshot in time. It's not as that gets iterated.
correct. So if somebody came early and they got the default page that was there at that time, then that's what they started with. But then they'll always see, oh, everybody else now has this newer version. Like maybe I wanted to use it, or maybe I want to take a piece of it, because like you can see here, this welcome visitors, it has this topics thing. So if I like it, I can just bring it in, and then now that's mine. So there is sort of some interesting ways to.
So it might be useful to have one that's like the collective.diglife.wiki, open learning commons.diglife.wiki, to just like have a stable account. Like, would you have to log in not as Robert Best, basically?
If you mean that, I think the whole point of this is to, or favors the more sort of intersubjective space where like each person has their own space. If we wanted sort of one more objective space, or like something that we converge on, then yeah, maybe we could do something around sort of like something without a subdomain, that it's just the wiki. But then I don't know how we would do this sort of authentication where like, because yeah, everybody would have to log in with the same account or something. I don't know how that would work. But the thing I was thinking is we could also play with hosting our own sort of I forget what's the wiki that Wikipedia is built on. It's the most popular one.
Media wiki, I believe.
Yeah. So we could pair those two together, and clearly there's already plugins for sort of making it really easy to drag and drop. So we could have like a more objective, whatever you want to call it, neutral point of view style wiki, and go back and forth between the two was what I was sort of thinking.
Well, I think that's like listening to what Jim McGee just said, and my experience has been, oh, this is super cool. I have no idea where to start. Repeatedly, like it's really cool, but it's all intersubjective. You don't have a clear like, here's a trail when you get lost. Like you just are stuck in the mud. So having some sort of like breadcrumbs, even if it's just, even if it's just a page that has a link to the How to Wiki page, just when you get lost, you can find it again.
Well, you can always search, but there is a sort of a default wiki.diglife.coop, without the Christina or the Jim Scriber or whatever.
So who puts what on there?
How we update that.
Yeah.
And if you click on recent changes, it shows you what pages who has changes. So you'll see a lot of people have changed welcome visitors because they want to tell visitors a different thing.
But it doesn't show any on ours anyway, because we haven't implemented it yet, right?
I guess it should show some. I would think there's certainly a history.
It's not showing any.
What do you mean it's not showing any?
Local changes? It just says no local changes. How do I make them? How do I make the pages go away? There's not a close box.
No, yeah, that's another little interface thing. You can just hit back because technically you notice as you're opening up pages, it's adding it to your URL, like in your address bar. So if you go back, it'll just literally go back. You can also...
But I can't like keep 1, 5, and 7 open and close the ones in between.
There very likely is some sort of keyboard shortcut to like close things, but I'm not aware. So that's another sort of potential. And there are people within the calls that happen every Wednesday that have been experimenting with their own little flavor of FedWiki to add some of these interface elements to it. I don't know. I forget some of the things that Board had shown me. There's also, actually, I'll show one interesting little interactivity bit. If you hold Shift on a page that, like, let's see, there's my page and there's this other page. If you hold Shift as you're going down, it'll line up the items that are the same. I guess in this case they're literally identical anyways, so it's not really that useful. Oh, there you go. So if I hold Shift on here, it'll like move all the other pages to put in line the same segments that are basically the exact same thing but on the other page. So I don't know, it would make if you are editing with somebody else, or that you have a page that's mostly the same and you just want to sort of see what's different and move back and forth between editing one or the other, then that's a neat little thing to... The other thing that wasn't shown is just say I start a new page. Let's see, what is this experiment? I probably created that. No, that's not me. Let's just try something. Okay, so now we have this try something page. When you create things, it doesn't technically exist until you click this create button. Now it actually exists in the wiki. If I hadn't have done that, it would just be a link to nothing. You can also link out externally. So you'll notice if I turn on this wiki thing, these are all the current, like I click plus to say I want to add something to this page. These are all the different types of things you can add in. It's not just HTML. You can do Markdown, GraphViz, all kinds of little plugins. Audio files, I think, are somewhere here, video. And so just say if I added an audio element, technically this box is like a special type of thing. And if you hit yet another keyboard shortcut, if you hit Alt-I on Windows, at least on any context that you're in, so just say I was over here and I hit Alt-I, it'll tell me about, this is a paragraph plugin, so it's like a little info box about how powerful this particular plugin is. So I bet if I go to, let's see, I think FedWiki tools. So this is where I was before with some of David's kind of interesting transporter things. If I double click on that and hit I, then it's going to tell me about this transport plugin and how it works and that sort of thing. Then there's also, what's really interesting, recent work is in this, I think it's this GraphViz stuff. What they're trying to do is make it so that you have a graph layout, or like a node edge layout of your whole wiki and potentially wiki farm. And as you're
click on the link that was in the chat. I think I've found the pretty wiki.
Pretty wiki. Anyways, let's see if this graphs of wikis, graphs in wiki. I know, I don't know. I'm not going to maybe find what I'm looking for, but yeah, they're creating almost like or maybe it is this one, this GraphViz one. Hold on a second here. Oh, it's Alt-I, about the GraphViz plugin. Yeah, so they're creating a GraphViz so that when you click on items actually in in the visualization, it links out to actual other pages on your federated wiki. And what they've created is what's called, I think, somewhat of a, oh yeah, here you go, the algorithmic markup. They're working on almost like what's known as a domain-specific language for specifying with a little bit of code, which is what this is, sort of what you want to visualize. And you can sort of say, on this page that I'm on, that's my starter node. I want to start here, which is what this says. And then you can start saying, okay, I want to show all links that are on this page 1 degree out. And then you'll have almost like a little dynamic map of, or a menu, a graph menu for starting from that page. And then every time you go back to that page, if say your whole wiki around you 2 nodes out has changed, that dynamic map will be different every time you show up to the page to sort of show you a graph visualization of all the pages of your wiki.
Click on the link I put in the chat and see if that's close.
In the Zoom chat?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty wiki.
The little animation down there.
Yeah, I think this isn't the latest work they're working on. What I was just showing here, this algorithmic, here, I'll share this whole link so that you can look it up later if you want.
Okay.
It goes into the whole the little graph describing language they're creating so as to be able to make this work. So you can see how I'm literally just clicking this graph and it's changing pages because it's kind of clicking on FedWiki links and then it knows what to do. I don't know. At this point, I guess I was just demoing some of the really cool stuff that I haven't really put into practice to like think about what we might do with it. It's just sort of affordances at this stage.
Well, we should at least have a place where we're saying like, here are learning steps. That, I mean, if you're getting Ward teaching you some of this stuff, we should be making it a little bit understandable for the Dig Life Open Learning Commons spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, we want to make our own welcome visitors page that gently introduces people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you know, I think it's a good place really for us to you know, create help and other things that go around. You know, particularly, you know, if we're going to pop up a little help window or something, we can pop up a little FedWiki page. That would be nice. I don't know if we can do that.
Yeah.
But why don't you show us that recent changes pages again that you were just at? And so you can see the activity. You can show. You can see all those changes to the welcome visitors page. You can hover over the little squares, and it'll tell you what wiki that changes on. And,
yeah.
You know, you can see activity where the multiple wikis change the same page with the same name. You notice that these are page names. And it's interesting because they're sort of a dual purpose. In one sense, you're associating pages having the same name across all different wikis. So it seems like some kind of pattern language and naming could be an organizational tool.
Mm-hmm.
But just because it has the same name doesn't necessarily mean it's the same page.
Yeah.
For example, all welcome visitors pages, in essence, should be different because each wiki has different stuff to welcome, you know.
Right. It's a different context.
Different place.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know. I'd have to look deeper to see how it associates. I'm holding the shift now, so it looks like it knows that the first paragraph is the same as the first paragraph, but as soon as I go down into something I guess is unique to my page, it has no way of knowing that that's now associated with this over here. And I guess I'm curious, well, one thing you mentioned, pattern language. This FedWiki in some sense was created by Ward specifically to be a pattern language development tool, or at least that's how he stated it before. And I'm curious, I don't know, in terms of our seemingly always dynamic agenda, I'm curious what's bubbling up for maybe Jim or Roland around how they might want to write collaboratively with others, or I've only taken the one Howard Rheingold class, but I'm curious how you think this might fit into sort of their sort of peer co-learning context.
Yeah, right.
I think it's going to be a learning experience and come up with best practices. You know, there needs to be, you know, for our, I mean, the main thing it's for is for personal content. But we're also going to need to have some curation, and we're going to have shared content content space where we could copy the stuff out of Wiki, but certainly the plugins and other things that make it a programmable environment are things that we would want to preserve. Things like opening a page in a frame and things like that would be the kind of thing that we would want to be able to do easily. To have curated content that we present to members. And in essence, when you go into these webs where you can't log in, they're static. But that wasn't more or less. I guess you can still fork them. But you know, right now, you know, I'm a noob. I'm struggling. I'm trying to back up to previous pages, previous content, and it's not working.
Oh yeah, actually, before we get a response from Jim McGee and Roland, I can demo that a little so that you know how to restore your welcome visitors page, which I think, because at this point, it looks like anybody that goes to the wiki can just start editing any page without having to authenticate, which is a little dangerous of a phase to be in.
What do you mean?
Well, you didn't have to log into Jim Scarver, and you totally edited the Jim Scarver page, and it was immediately live on the web. But what you can do is, you'll notice that's the point of this thing down here. It's called the journal. It's like a linear sequence of all the edits you've made, and you can always roll back to previous versions. So how you do that is you click the very first one. So here, welcome visitors, this one had literally nothing on it. So like I made this, where was it? Where was my last edit? Let me not do it to my welcome visitors. Let's do it with try something. And let's say I added, I don't know, I just double click and test 2. Just say I didn't like this. There's test 2. There's just test. If I want to go back to just this version, you click the fork on this old version. And then if I reload the page, you'll see that it's back, like even here, it's back to the old version. So you can at any time fork old versions to bring that version back up to your current. And that's how you would undo mistakes and things like that. But I'll stop there.
All right, I'm trying.
Are you still feeling super overwhelmed, Jim McGee?
Yep.
But
Yep.
you said you've played in these spaces for a long time, right? Or like,
Yeah.
I'm assuming with all the sort of knowledge management stuff you've done for different organizations, I'm sure it's gotten hairy, like just like this at different times,
Sure.
playing
No,
new stuff.
being lost isn't a bad thing. I've reached a stage in life where it doesn't bother me to be lost. It's an observation that I'm lost. And I'm hoping to find my way back, and along the way, perhaps, leave a trail for others so that they get lost in different places, as opposed to it's like, the trick about being lost is you don't want to keep traveling the same territory and getting lost the same way every time, which is where I am right now. With Federated WIki, but that's okay, right? It is what it is, right? And part of it is stepping back. How do I want to say this? I am as susceptible to the latest bright, shiny object as anybody, if not more so. And I mean, I was probably in my 40s before I figured out that I had lived with attention deficit disorder most of my life. So I'm late to the party. That's a story for another time. But the part of dealing with that is being able to step back and sort of saying, what are you going to do with it, right?
Yes.
Stuff is fine, but why? What am I going to do with it? What problem am I trying to solve that this solves better than any other problem I've been trying to solve?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that's where that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around.
Looking for use cases.
Looking for use cases. I've always, for example, I've always found this notion of collaborative editing of a document to seem attractive on the surface and never work in practice. Editing is always a process of sort of negotiating, change, and of sort of deciding kind of who has the football, who's doing the edits right now. Nobody ever sits down side by side, on two separate keyboards and edits something, no matter how many times programmers create that.
I beg to differ.
Okay.
That's actually been how most of the Dig Life site was written.
Really? Oh, okay. So I'm prepared to learn something new today. But most of, somebody writes a draft, and then somebody edits it. But, the notion of sort of, maybe it's just the way I write, I have been brutally edited by some very good editors. It's not that I have any objection to being edited, right? I've never written anything that hasn't been improved by the eyes of a good editor. But
we did the, like, if somebody had deep domain expertise, they would write the first draft,
right,
and then everybody would hack it. But the most efficient ones, I was sort of responsible for pulling everything together and getting the content onto the website.
Okay.
So a lot of the time I would literally keep the document open at the same time and synchronously have us go through it together. And then we could just basically have the negotiation over the video and each write the sections that we would agree in voice and then write what we had agreed to.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, but there's a management process there.
Google Docs has a lot of opinion baked in, and it has a lot of power because it's that collaborative suite. So as we're moving away from Google Docs, we're trying Notepad and we're trying Federated WIki, and we're trying these different tools to see if we can find a trustworthy tech to collaborate with.
From my perspective, my frustration with Wikipedia is that it's really perseverance It's what trolls are paid to get the content the way that the powerful want them to be.
Yes.
Whereas with FedWiki, there is no negotiation. Everybody is free to make their own version, and other people can accept that version or not. So it's egalitarian in that everybody is an equal editor, and it's free to evolve. It isn't constrained by some central authority or editor that says what it's going to be. It can be what people want it to be, and they can sort of grassroots say, "Hey, I like Christine's version of this page, so I'm going to accept that." And then somebody reads mine and say, "Oh, I like that." And then you have the whole trail. You know the history. You know it came from Christine to me to Joe to whatever. So you have complete attribution of who did what and when. It's I would like to see some event processing type things, like if Christine forks a page of mine, I always want to accept it, for example. Okay, right now it doesn't allow me to do that.
So you mean keep it in sync? You want to merge them back together so that we literally have the same page?
Right.
Yeah. That seems really important to me too.
You mean in like an automated way, right?
Right.
Or at least a notification boosted way. It doesn't have to be fully automated, but
I mean, if you go frequently to the recent updates, you can see who did what very easily and decide whether you want to fork it or not.
Yeah, but we don't have time to do that. I mean, the thing that Jim said, Jim McGee, why are we doing this? And what is it with whatever the name of it was? Where is it? wiki.diglife.coop. What is there? How does that relate to wherever the Open Learning Commons is working? How can we, like, when you have everybody intersubjectively co-creating everything, and then you just end up with a whole bunch of different welcome visitors page or a whole bunch of different pages that are named the same thing, but maybe they have a little bit of difference.
Why would you welcome visitors on your wiki the same way that I do on my wiki? I mean,
no, you wouldn't.
We have different stuff on our wikis.
Yeah, it would work beautifully if everybody did their own project and finished it. It's just that my experience has been you follow a trail and then you find a broken link, or it just stops. There's some really interesting possibilities. It's just definitely interface problems.
Right, but if you're on, let's say, mapping.wiki.diglife.coop, okay, why that wouldn't have the same welcome visitors as
no, of course not.
socialledger.wiki.
Right.
No matter what wiki you're in, you can fork it and make proposed changes, and then when
but who are you proposing them to? You just make the changes. That's the thing.
Yeah, I agree that it would be useful to be able to subscribe to changes in sort of a more of a notification based way. But yeah, I wouldn't want to see every notification that anybody ever creates on a page that just happens to have the same name as mine. Like that would be crazy.
Well, that's what you see when you go to recent changes. You see all of them in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But I meant notifications as in some sort of like little inbox, or maybe even literally in my email inbox.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think event processing.
Don't put them in my email inbox.
Well, the other interesting thing that you said about two things I wanted to say. One thing that you said about broken links, there aren't really broken links on a FedWiki space, because if you click a link, it'll just take you somewhere, and if it doesn't exist, it's almost an invitation to create this thing that doesn't yet exist. You don't.
If you have any idea how to create it, who you're creating it for,
Yeah.
any like how it works, if you've been onboarded, which
Right. Well, and then your typos take you to new pages instead of the place you want to go.
exactly. There's like
Right. And then the question is,
40
was that a
different-
typo, or was I doing something new?
exactly.
You know, there's a set of behaviors that work that need to be learned. It's a little bit like doing improv in the theater, right? You know, and in improv, there are 2 or 3 rules that everybody who does improv learns, and that lets the improv go forward. And until you learn those rules, and that, 1, learn the rules, and 2, incorporate them into your routine reactions, you don't do improv very well. And I think the Federated Wiki has the same thing going on. There are a set of behaviors that once you learn them, they work well for the people who sort of have made it over the hump. It looks like I'm sure Ward and his people do, create lots of cool stuff very quickly. I think, or even go to your point, Christina, collaboratively creating a document works well with a group that's figured out how to do that. To who, in terms of who are we going to let lead here, who's going to hold back, right? Who is the person who's the one who's really good with, with phrasing? Who's the person who's good with global structure? And those roles sort out, and that's all good. But you don't just jump in and start. You don't just jump in and be productive.
Yeah, I think Google Documents is a very powerful tool that most people don't know how to use well. And,
exactly.
I
watch my students when they do group work always set up a Google document, but they have no clue what to do to make that work, other than sitting next to each other and people sort of typing, in different parts of the document, but there's no conceptual integrity to what's going on until someone says, stop, wait a minute. I'm going to put an outline structure up. Everybody else, hands off the keyboard. Here's an outline structure. Now, Christina, you take this section. Robert, you take this section. Do the first draft.
Yeah, that's basically what we do.
Right. And now, let's roll. Everybody, it's like take your copy and move it 1 person to the left. Edit that copy. Right. I mean, there are rules that work, and those get discovered. I don't know. I think the thing that's overwhelming me about this particular technology is I have no clue what those rules are, and I don't know how to go about finding someone to take me by the hand to learn how to do that.
Yeah, I think once we do that, we could probably make a short video that'll get people started.
Right, but I think that would be a great idea. But it actually, it will have to be, it'll have to be the video that occurs after the 3 or 4 videos of stumbling around in the dark. Of Robert going, this is cool. You can do this, and you can do this, and here, and it's like, it's got to be a much more controlled.
Right.
Walk.
Hey, Roland, what if we take the notepad doc that you started for orientation to dig life and how people might want to talk about stuff, and use it as an experiment for this group. And then as the Kumu map of it that you and Colin and I are going to make, we can actually have a Kumu map and a FedWiki that makes sense together for exploring tech we trust topics.
Yeah, people could fork it and make their own versions and come up with new ideas, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share that notepad link so people
Yep, I will.
in the channel? That would be great.
The one thing I wanted to mention here, I like totally agree that in terms of like structured processes would totally be useful in sort of, but I think one of the things underlying FedWiki, given that it's sort of, I don't know, it's kind of, it's really subtle and there's a lot to it. And I think that it has many, many affordances. So there's probably many different structured processes that could live on top of it. There's not just one best way to flow with it. And yeah, that there's sort of, and they haven't all been discovered either. So in some sense, we can sort of discover different modes to play on top of it with, and sort of that's, yeah, that's in some part, like that's kind of my thinking. The purpose of this call is exactly how you described it. We sort of have that messy cognitive dissonant phase where we're just messing around with things and we don't know what the mode of operation that works good for the problem we're trying to solve is yet. But as long as we're open to playing with it, we might discover things we weren't even intending to discover. And yeah, I guess the other metaphor that came to mind around that is the sort of Engelbart's sort of bicycle thing, that like we sort of want to learn how to ride the bicycle before we sort of say, nah, I just want to stick with my tricycle for the rest of my life. That it is worth sort of spending the time to sort of become power users of these different tools. It's just in this context, there's many different ways for it to be powerful. There's not just one sort of, this is how you use FedWiki.
Right. Well, and in reference to that metaphor, I had a conversation with Alan Kay once about this, and he made a really interesting. He said, learning to ride a bicycle is a really complex thing, and training wheels are the worst thing you can do to learn how to ride a bicycle. Right. In fact, it essentially recreates the problem of a tricycle while creating the illusion that you're not doing a tricycle. And so, what we need to do here is to sort of say, look, there are we're all going to fall down and get hurt here, right? Now we have to be careful. I have 15 screws and a large steel plate in this shoulder because of learning how to ride a bicycle with clips, kind of shoot, and unsuccessfully learning, as you might imagine. But those things happen, right? Accidents happen. And you can recover from them. And I think the part of the thing that's going on with FedWiki is this is Ward's sort of third go round of solving this problem, right? Kind of said, well, here I got this issue. I'm going to create this thing called a wiki, and there's a whole bunch, and then he said, there's some things that were really cool with this, but there are other things that didn't do. So now I'm going to create this idea of a federated wiki, and I don't know how many, and he's deep into solving real problems that we all struggle with, and the people around him. So that's why I think it's so cool. There's power in this, but because there's power, you need someone to prevent you from, driving the bicycle off a cliff. And which also involves some people, in fact, driving it off of cliffs and climbing back up to the, the top and saying, "All right, don't turn there." Right. Right. But it might be really good for you to come right up to the edge, and here's where you need to slow down, because it's a thing Dave Weiner, it's a narrating your work kind of practice of kind of keeping notes for yourself as to what is going on that are separate from the product you're creating. There's sort of, you got this, I often find there are 2 or 3 things I'm writing in 2 or 3 places at once frequently when I'm in these kind of things of, here's what I'm trying to create, here are the notes to myself about you know, over here about what problems I'm running into, kind of as I'm observing what I'm doing and things to go check. And those are not the same thing. Those are two distinct pieces. And then somewhere else there's the, you know, there are the notes that I'm making that are going to be for the next thing I create.
Okay, guys, I will experiment with Federated Wiki. This was my very first introduction to the thing. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I need to go now, but we'll keep in touch on the forum.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Robert, do you have a basic like getting started root page? I mean, should we even try getting started anywhere until we have the farm up for Dig Life?
Well, it is up, and I think if you just claimed your own site and nobody knows about it, and you just start editing it, you can claim it later. Like it's not going to be, and you can undo like I showed. So it's not really that risky. I guess the cliffs that you could drive off on, we could just sort of hit the undo button on those cliffs. But
Okay.
the other thing, actually, I forget your second question.
Just like
Oh,
some simple 5 steps, and I think Jim's 5 rule, like a few rules to how to play in this space.
I think
to
though,
create something together.
hold on a second. I'm gonna go. Let me screen share just so. I think what Jim pointed out is something that can be used. I think that is what was pointed to me one of the first times too. So if I go Robert.wiki, there we go. This how to wiki, I think if you sort of start at link 1 and sort of click through, it teaches a lot of the stuff here. It's sort of, and I'm assuming it's in a logical ordering that like.
Yeah, I wasn't too crazy about the organization. Of course,
this is the question that I have. Go ahead, Jim. I have a lag. Sorry.
Yeah, in going through this, I didn't particularly like the way it was set up, but I didn't fix it. I could have, and that's sort of the habit that we have to get is, you know, fixing as we go along, make it better. But I think, you know, baby steps is the key. You know, we have to see one simple thing that people can do for a purpose and just show them what that one thing. And then maybe, you know, in a 60-second video or whatever. And then maybe end with, you know.
One of the, I have a, what is step 0?
I think it's.
What's the step? What's the first thing I have to do?
I think you have to write whatever your handle is in Mattermost.
Well, no, just you could
in front of wiki.diglife.coop and start playing there.
And it doesn't have to be your handle, just whatever you want it to be. You can share it.
Oh, well, if they figure out the Mattermost login, maybe it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. It's going to get a certificate for all those names, I guess, if we do HTTPS, which it's not doing HTTPS currently.
And the other thing too is that because it's this intersubjective space, like, and I think you can make subdomains. Like, actually, let me just try. No, that didn't work. So maybe I'm just wrong, but no. Okay, maybe not. I thought you could make subdomains, but each person could totally have 4, 5, 6, as many different wikis that they want. There wouldn't just be one Christina Bowen wiki. You could have, and in terms of writing from, this is another sort of one of its affordances. Instead of, you could intentionally write about, say, system mapping from an ecological perspective and call it ecological.christina.wiki. And then you could write about system mapping from a computer science perspective and you know what I mean? You can intentionally use the site naming as a way of
Yeah.
describing the sort of perspective you're coming at it from.
But how does it know it's all me on that server? And HTTPS, what Jim just mentioned, is going to be critical within the members of the Digital Life Collective. If we have a bunch of sites that are not secure,
Yeah.
they won't, like, that's going to be a massive fail point if we can't figure that out.
That's
the first step. Figure out HTTPS on the server.
Yeah. Other FedWiki sites already have that. It's just that we haven't taken that step yet. It's not that it's impossible.
So it's possible. Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, it's so easy to create a subdomain that I could see why it might not be possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we could maintain a list of sites that are allocated and not have them automatically be created, but they don't provide a mechanism to do that. You'd have to.
What if Robert wants mapping.wiki.diglife.coop and I want mapping.wiki.diglife.coop?
I guess in this case it's a race to whoever claims it first, or maybe we could coordinate and say, hey, let's use this shared email account and we can both log in with the same credentials, or maybe
wait, so I can't log in with my one credentials to all the sites that I own?
Well, say if we set it up with Google, like we used Google as our authenticator, then any site that you claimed with your Google, you would be able to, with a one click, get back in. Yeah. You would just, and that's sort of the point of the rosters, is to sort of keep track of, and I don't know why some of these aren't working, but you did see them before. It was like those big boxes with the colored boxes. Those are rosters, but you can make your own custom roster to keep track of. Just say I wanted to keep track of, okay, what's Jim McGee, Jim Scarver, and Christina writing about? I could add your wikis into a roster and intentionally use that roster to bring that group into my current neighborhood and say, okay, now I can see recent pages and see what everybody's done. So you can use the rosters as a way to sort of keep track just personally of all the wikis that you've started, or that sort of thing. So there's means within FedWiki to do some of this sort of bookmarking and tracking. And actually, one thing I was just going to show, which I discovered, we were talking about, how do we prioritize, or what is the step 2, step 3? I just discovered what I was trying to describe earlier, how, you know how I said if you hold shift, it'll show you, okay, this is the same, because it's literally the same. But if I edit this page and move this and I say, okay, I think this should be step 2, not step 1, it still knows. You can see now the yellow, it still knows that, okay, he just moved this. It's still the same item. He just changed the ordering. And that's how the holding shift can kind of be useful. So we could, in a collaborative way, sort of over time, iterate on like, what is the best way to learn how to FedWiki, and do it collaboratively of like, I've heard it called like a generative sequence, or a tea-house sequence, I think, by John Keldon, of like, yeah, we can get very deliberate about like, what is the next natural step that somebody should learn. And this fits directly into what I was thinking about, how we could do sort of knowledge trails for Open Learning Commons, is that, yeah, we create trails for each other, like you called it, Jim, and that's sort of a piece of some of the sort of metaphorical thinking. Eric Rangel, who's in our group, has had a thing called Climb That Mountain, and that's the reason for the little mountain icon in the open learning space, is this sort of metaphor of leaving trails for each other. And anyways, I guess I'm just rambling now. Okay. I don't know. It's kind of endless, and that's a part of it. It's almost endless, some of the affordances on FedWiki, what you could make it do. And I think you do need to design little sort of facilitated loops within it of like, let's use it this way for this purpose.
Well, I think that if we can all look at Roland's notepad, or ask, I think you have to request access to his Google Doc. It's the same content, but Jim, do you have notepad access yet?
And by notepad, it's the CodeMD sort of collaborative markdown thing.
No, I don't know that I've worked that out yet. I don't think so.
Mm.
Just because I've been, gradually easing my way into this thing. So
Are you
I'm not yet
only in the Open Learning Commons? You're not a member of DigLife yet?
Not yet, but give me a few hours.
You want to see Philip's video? I always
fix
give
that.
this one.
Yeah, send me it.
Let me give you the link with the video on it. It's the
Great.
join us, and I think it all works. But
Got it. I haven't.
I love that little 2-minute of why to join.
Okay.
It was very strong against like surveillance capitalism, so they toned it down.
Okay. That's still on my shelf. I've always found Shoshana's stuff a little bit over the top, going way back to her earliest, in the age of the smart machine. She's always had a very particular perspective. And not that I don't think she's onto some very important stuff, but
yeah. Anyway, when you're in as a DigLife member, if you at Christina in any of the spaces, I'm kind of in all the spaces. Just let me know, and I can add you, or Robert can, or Jim for that. All three of us could add you to the Cloud Run.
Okay, awesome.
So that you'll have access to the member tools.
Awesome.
And that includes the notepad. And I'm really actually very interested to see the difference, because you could like embed in your FedWiki, you could embed a notepad page, and then people will either like completely delete the embed if they don't agree with that at all, or they keep the whole thing and join the group that's editing the notepad. And that's like a more stable collaborative space, but it's still really dynamically changing. And then we embed the notepads in the DigLife site, like the member orientation page has a notepad that is updated a lot. But you don't have to update the actual website content. There's like a cascade of stability between like the organization as a brand and what you want on the website, the working teams that are doing stuff and really collaborating a lot together, and then everybody exploring FedWiki and like doing all these crazy knowledge trails all over the place. There's a cascade of stability there, of like the website content gets put up there and doesn't change for a long time until you revisit it. The team content might change in a rhythm, once a week, once a month, once a quarter. And any embeds on the website like automatically update, which is great. If somebody took an embed for a notepad page and stuck it in a FedWiki, that would give some of the stability for content and context that we're looking for. And if somebody didn't want that on their part of the wiki they were building, they just delete the embed. Because the content there, the text content there, is not all forkable, I think.
I'm not sure about it embedding a page there. I don't.
You can't do embeds?
Yeah, I don't know. Embedding a web page. I would assume there's a plugin for that.
There's an HTML plugin. I'm not sure if it would be an iframe, and sometimes when you get into iframes, it starts getting tricky about what servers will let content in or not. So I'm not sure either.
It's something to play with.
Yep.
I gotta go, folks. It's been great.
You can end the recording.
Yep. I will